Can you kindly quickly go over the moment or the experience that inspired you to write Die with Zero?
Die with Zero, and it was basically
Mhm.
that I want to use all my resources, my wealth, my health, and my time. And this question was about my wealth to drive my fulfillment throughout my life. I wrote the book for me to help me, and then that it would help other people, and that getting the mental models out, the ideas down.
I think you introduced the idea of memory dividends.
Most of the times when you go to talk with friends, right? Sometimes you talk about what's happening immediately right now, and sometimes about the future, but a lot is about what has happened to you. And that also provides enjoyment. When you invest in an experience, it pays you interest in the form of a memory dividend. The question is okay, when and how do I spend that money throughout my life? Is it the same amount of money each year in my life? Where the most spending is dictated by your health, right? And so after that, you can make more and more money, but you won't spend it because you really don't have the aptitude or attitude to spend it. Realizing that will help you to allocate your spending correctly so that you can get the most fulfillment.
今回のピボットグローバルは今年3月に50万部を突破したベストセラー Die with Zero の著者ビル・パーキンス氏にインタビューを行います。ほとんどメディアには登場されず、おそらくこの映像メディアでも日本では初登場なんじゃないかということで、ちょっとどういう方か私もずっと緊張しながら聞くことを考えておりました。で、実はこの、ダイビズゼロというコンセプトですね、いわゆるコロナ禍でこの本が刊行されたこともあって、よりインパクトが大きかったと思うんですけれども、私自身もそういう非常に衝撃を受けた考え方でして、これまでの常識であるお金の貯め方とか、増やし方ということではなく、どういうふうにお金を効果的に使っていくか、ダイビズゼロ、つまりもう持たずに死ぬということで、お金の使い切りに関して、あと時間とお金の関係性とかですね、深くこのビル・パーキンス氏の、経験ももとに書かれている本になっています。一回その読んだのがもう4、5年前、刊行当時だったんですけれども、少し年月を経て、また改めて、2回ぐらい読み返しているんですけれども、やっぱりその読むたびに結構自分の中で気づくポイントがまた変わってくるのがこの本の面白いところだと思っています。おそらく、この読んでいる時の自分の置かれている環境ですとか、年齢によっても感じ方が変わってくる。そんな味わい深い本でありまして、常に私も本棚に一番結構見える棚に置いてあるので、ぜひですね、まだ読んだことないという方は、これ読んでからもちろんインタビューを聞いていただいてもいいんですけれども、まずはインタビューを聞いてから、読んでいただくとか、結構楽しめるんじゃないかなと思ってます。本自体もとても楽しめるので、インタビューでどんなことが聞けるか、今から楽しみにしております。Thank you again for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Uh-huh. So let's start with the heart of all. Um, can you kindly quickly go over the moment or the experience that inspired you to write Die with Zero?
Yeah, I think there were many moments in my life that kind of got me to the concepts in Die with Zero and
Right.
wrestling with them over my life. But I think actually sitting down and writing the book, and I always say that I wrote the book to save myself, to help myself first, was in the doctor's office. I was in a doctor's office and they were doing all types of exams that try and help you live a little bit longer and healthier. And he asked the psychological question, do you fear running out of money? And I answered the question, I hope I run out of money. And I went into a long discussion about why, and which is explained in the book, The Die with Zero. And it was basically that I want to use all my resources, my wealth, my health, and my time. And this question was about my wealth to drive my fulfillment throughout my life. Like that, it was a tool to drive my fulfillment, and I didn't want to waste that tool. Therefore, waste time working for that money and parts of my life. And he was kind of shocked and amazed. He was like, wow, no one's answered the question that way. I told them that I was trying to write a computer program to help me, do this, put on all these variables and live this kind of like almost perfect life, right? With respect to the money. And he told me that I needed to write a book, that no one has written a book about this subject in that way, and
Right.
that it would be very helpful. And I thought about it, and I thought, ultimately I needed, I wrote the book for me to help me, and then that
Hmm.
it would help other people, and that getting the mental models out, the
Hmm.
ideas down, would actually
Right.
help me have a more fulfilling life and hopefully help others.
That must be one of the boldest ideas in your book, to how you frame risk as well. So I think
Yes.
writing a book must be one of the bold life choices you've made, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
It's a lot more difficult than I thought it would be going into it,
I
even
see.
with help. But yeah, but it's been great. The feedback in the book has been great, and it has impacted people in many ways to like rethink about how they
Right.
will get the most out of life.
I see. Well, but unfortunately, like in countries like Japan, for us, saving is seen as a lifelong virtue. So why do you believe too much saving can actually work against us?
Well, at the end of the day, you know, the money you save represents hours of your life that you went to work
Right.
and then
Hmm.
you didn't use for anything except for your future self, right? You
Right.
you basically
Mhm.
delayed gratification, and essentially delaying gratification to the extreme is no gratification, which
Right.
means,
Right.
very simply that you went to work for
Hmm.
essentially no pay, right?
Mm.
And okay, maybe I'll get into like when you should give to others, or your kids and your family later, but
Mhm.
maybe then the next generation they're going to use it, but then they save, and then
Mhm.
if you keep going down the line, if I like to think about things in terms of very large numbers or infinity. Imagine you have a culture where everyone saves and no one spends. Then I was like, well, who gets to enjoy their life?
Mm.
No one really gets to enjoy the fruit of their labor. They
Right.
just go to work, save,
Mm.
and next person. And what is the purpose? What is the point? And so I think people have to think about one of the original things that I thought before writing the book about money is like, what is the purpose of my life?
Mm.
What's the purpose of and everybody's lives, right? And
Right.
it's I didn't put a thing like to be a shopkeeper or a doctor or a mom or dad. I said is to be fulfilled. Whatever
Mm.
fulfillment is, it's a very broad term, whatever that means to you. That and
Right.
so and then what does the role of money in
Mhm.
your life, your health, your health, and your time? But right now we're talking about money. What role does that play? How do we use the tool called money to have the most fulfilling life?
Mm.
And within your values. So if your values are to pass money on to future generations, how much and when? And then
Mm.
even if it's not how much is when should you give it to them? Right? Is it
Mm.
a
Mhm.
random date in the future when you die, or is there a more logical physics-based answer based on people's health and their ability to enjoy fulfillment? So all these questions, I was thinking
Right.
about and coming up with answers, which are in this book, this concept. The concepts in the book are there based on thinking about the very big question: what is it all about?
Mhm.
And what tools do I have to drive that goal, which is fulfillment?
I see. So that must be one of the most powerful ideas in your book, which is about how time and memory shape value. And I
Yeah.
think you introduced the idea of memory dividends, and that was
Yes.
very, I love that idea. So can you break that down for people who've never heard of it?
Yeah. So when you have an experience, whether you go on a ride, go on a date, visit your parents, etc., you get enjoyment from the activity in the moment, right? You
Right,
have some
right.
enjoyment,
Uh-huh.
but you also get enjoyment recalling those activities. Most of the times when you go to talk with friends, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes you talk about what's happening immediately right now, and
Right.
sometimes about the future, but a lot is about what has happened to you. What did you do? Well, I went on vacation and this happened. Remember this time we were in school and we played soccer and I scored the winning goal, or whatever it may be. And that
Mm,
also provides enjoyment talking amongst
mhm.
your friends. And even when you think about certain things, right?
Right.
Like you recall, If you think about a loved one that you spent time with right now, or a great moment in your life, you get enjoyment, some fulfillment from that activity. And so these activities pay what I call a memory dividend, just as if you invest into a bank, right? And it pays you some sort of interest, right? When you invest in an experience, it pays you interest in the form of a memory dividend. And that drives your total fulfillment, right? Your self-concept of who you are, whether you had a good life or whether you're happy that day, is largely a result of the experiences that you have had up until this moment. And so, when you think about money, right? Like you go to work, you have money, and the purposes of it is for survival. So you pay for your basic needs, right? And then the excess is about what will drive your fulfillment. How will you spend? Will you go to the movies? Will you go to visit relatives? Will you give to charity? Whatever it is, those are your choices, right? I don't tell people how to live a life, but when you do that, you invest in those experiences over your life. You will receive memory dividends, and they compound, right? Because if you go do an activity, and let's say you went on a trip to the United States of America and you went to New York City and you come back, right? And you meet somebody new and you're hanging out with them. You're like, well, I went to New York City and this happened. And at that same time, right, then they're talking about their trip, and that experience is compounding, right? It's creating a new memory of talking about the trip at dinner with the person and laughing and et cetera and going on. And so, the idea that investing in your life and your own fulfillment that would pay a dividend, a memory dividend, that is equivalent to a banking dividend, I think was very new for a lot of people. Another example, just to explain in another way, is that let's say you're 20 and you can save, and with the return on the investment, you can either spend the money and go on one ski trip now at 20, or with the returns on your investment, go on 2 ski trips when you're 30, right? Well, you have to say, well, I would go on a ski trip now with people that I love, and maybe they're not around, maybe they're going to go leave the country or whatever, and I would have memory dividends. Or I can do 2 ski trips later, and I'll definitely know people, and I'll be healthy enough to ski, et cetera. And the choice, might be 1 ski trip now, might be 2 ski trips at 30. But at 65 versus 75, perhaps the memory dividend and the fact that your body is deteriorating, those factors start to go in and say, well, maybe I won't be able to ski as much when I'm 65 because, my back hurts or my health, et cetera. Some of the people I want to go skiing with may not be around because some of my friends are older, et cetera. Perhaps the memory dividend and the investment in experience now versus saving for later makes sense. And so I don't give the exact answer. It all depends on you. It's very personal on how much the memory dividend will be in calculating, and your ability to enjoy the fruits of your labor later will be. But this is a concept that I think everybody should have when they're thinking about saving versus investing. And when I say investing, I mean investing in an experience right now.
I see. Yeah. So that's the idea of front load your experience, right? So
Yeah.
can you give me a little bit of a hint on about the timing?
Yeah. So that when you're you have to think about what happens over the course of my life, right? Like one of the things is like, okay, if you're going to go to work and make money, and it makes sense that you should use all your money before you die, right? The question is when, right? When should you, it's not all in one day, right? It's not, you don't spend all your money and then in your future self is like, wow, I have no money and I'm not surviving, right? We need to solve for surviving, right? So let's just say we had, for the purpose of this discussion, that all the money that you need to survive, your housing and your food, clothing, shelter, was guaranteed, and we're talking only about the excess money. Okay, this is in this thought experiment, and so the question is okay, when and how do I spend that money throughout my life? Is it the same amount of money each year in my life? And I thought, well, what's going to drive that is 2 factors: your personality, the things you want, right, and your health. Okay. So when we turn 28, we reach mental maturity. Our brains are as sharp as they're ever going to be. And we reach 33, reach physical maturity, and then we're in plateau and we decline. And so that decline both in mental and physical acuity, okay,
Right.
that's a forcing function.
Mm.
You will not be able to hike Mount Kilimanjaro at 85, most of us, right? Like we will
Right.
not be able to ski. There are certain activities that you either cannot do
Mm.
or they are less enjoyable, right?
That's
So you
correct.
could do it, but I don't really want to walk 7 hours around Paris, you know? Like I can only work like an hour and then I'm really want to tired and I might take a nap, right? So
Right.
the idea of a big walking city
Uh-huh.
is not as enjoyable, right? Like you don't get
Right,
as much
right.
out of Paris later
Uh-huh.
in life. And so, and then the other thing is that what does your life look like? Are you the type of person that, wants to get married, wants to have kids, wants to go, do certain
Mm.
activities, and how you place those activities in each order, you're right?
Right.
Um, affects whether you get to do a lot of that or not. Like going
Mhm.
out dancing and going to clubs is probably good to do in your 20s when you're single, not in your 30s when you're married, right? Like, just
Right.
getting the order right. Like certain
Uh-huh.
experiences belong in certain parts of your life. And it's
Right,
very
right.
and that really is depend on the individual and what they want out of life. But the fact remains that all humans will deteriorate and die,
Mhm.
and therefore certain activities belong in certain parts of their lives. And
Mm.
when you start to look at the data, right?
Mhm.
This is United States data, but I'm pretty sure it's globally.
Mhm.
You can see that as people get older, they tend to spend less, right?
Mm.
They reach a certain age and their spending goes down. And I think it largely has to do with the physics of our bodies, right? And our
Right.
temperament changing over time.
Uh-huh.
There's certain things that I don't know. I'm older. I'm in my 50s, but
Mhm.
going all night raging at a club with glow sticks and having a raging party is not as appealing as it used to be in my
Right.
20s, right? Just for whatever reason, right? I could still do it, right? And certain other activities are more appealing, and so
Mhm.
you tend to see certain groups and certain ages do certain activities regardless of ability, and then you see certain groups doing certain activities because of abilities and because of the enjoyment factor. And so this creates this curve, right?
Mhm.
That the majority of your spending years, right,
Mhm.
are dictated where the most spending is dictated by your health, right? And
Right.
so after that, you can make more and more money, but you won't spend it because you really don't have the aptitude or
Mm.
attitude to spend it, right?
Right,
Now, there's
right.
always exceptions, right? There's people who
Mhm.
run marathons at 90 and or partying out in the club, and you're like, wow, that guy's 90 partying, But by and large, most people's lives will follow a predictable
Mm.
path,
That's
and
right.
and realizing that will help you to allocate your spending correctly so that you can get the most fulfillment.
Mm. Okay, so if you don't mind, is there a personal story or memory from your own life that captures this idea perfectly?
I don't think anything. I can tell you a story in my life that where I was getting it wrong, right? Like I didn't.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so remember, I wrote the book for myself to like save
Right.
my own life, right? Like so I could have the most fulfilling life. And I was, the reason why I have these concepts in the book is not because I was like some genius sitting there. It's just because I was doing it wrong so often, and then I would
Okay.
learn from these experiences. And so one at a time, I was like, I read a book called Your Money or Your Life, and it's very much about explaining how the definition of money is something you exchange your time for, right?
Mhm.
And so you take hours of your life, you do a job, and then they give you money in exchange. So
Right.
basically, you're giving hours of your life energy in exchange for money.
Mhm.
And the book has you write down all the hours you need to go to work and how much money, and
Mhm.
then you keep track of it very diligently. And
Mhm.
then after tracking exactly how much an hour of your time is worth, it eventually says remove all the dollar signs
Mhm.
and write down all your purchases and all your expenditures
Mm.
in time.
Right.
So instead of saying buying a shirt for $20, you would say,
Mhm.
oh, that was, at the time for me, 2 hours of work, right?
Mm.
Even more, like 4 or 5 hours of work.
Right.
Or popcorn or going to a
Mhm.
movie was 45 minutes,
Mm.
or riding the bus, was like 20 minutes of work, or whatever it was.
Mhm.
And so what that does is quickly get you in touch with your values, and it tends to
Mm.
make you frugal. Like, oh my gosh, I don't want to spend 4 hours for that shirt. I
Right.
want a cheaper shirt, right?
Mhm.
And so I became very frugal and saved a lot of money. And
Mm.
I was one time talking about with a friend at work about how much money I saved, and my boss overheard me and called me an effing idiot. He says, "What are you, an
Mm.
idiot? What are you doing saving all that money?"
Oh,
And I thought, well, why is he going? Like, I was shocked. I thought I
right,
was proud of
right.
myself. And he was like, "No, you came. It's like you're at this job, and your career will go up to make millions. You're here to try to make a lot of money. Go
Mhm.
out and enjoy that money. What do you do? You're
Mm,
such an idiot saving the money." And I thought about it and I was like, he's right. I'm
mm,
I'm clearly here to make more money in the future. I can actually quit this job and be a waiter and make more money,
mhm.
right? And I'm taking away from my poor younger self, and
Right.
I'm effectively giving money to my future richer self.
Mhm.
So if, we could look at the timeline of my life, I was essentially robbing from the poor to give to the rich.
Right.
And not having investing in experiences that I could have fun with or enjoy or be fulfilled
Mhm.
with that would pay dividends for the rest of my life. And so
Mm,
that was one experience, that realized like I was on autopilot, not being intentional with the way I
mhm.
was living my life, that really hit me. And then I've been on the other side of autopilot, particularly in America. We have a problem where people just spend too much. Where once it
Mm,
happened, I was
mhm.
like, "Yeah, he's right." And then I spent every single nickel I had, right?
Right.
And then I was like, "Wait a minute," and then having to be a situation where, like, why, I'm making all this money, I never have any money. Like, where is it going? And I realized,
Right.
okay, I'm robbing from my future self, my future survival,
Ah,
and
okay.
taking on two
Uh-huh.
risks. So I realized there was a balance, right? I was
Right.
ping ponging back and forth, but I realized
Mhm.
the main thing is to be intentional with your life
Okay.
and your
Mhm.
very.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you for your sharing your story.
You're welcome.
So, why don't we bring this down to the everyday life? So, for people with average incomes, how can they apply your ideas, first of all, without risking financial security?
Yeah, I think people have financial planners, and I think particularly in Japan, they're very good about understanding like what it takes for them to live and how much they
Mhm.
will need to save, and then they can figure out like when will I probably expire right around those dates,
Right.
and you can be, uh, and you really need to figure out what is the lowest number to survive, like what will
Okay.
cover my housing, my food, and shelter,
Uh-huh.
right? And that's going to be dependent on where you live. If you live in Tokyo
Mhm.
versus, Kyushu,
Right.
or
Uh-huh.
right,
Right.
it's
Suburb
a total
area.
different like
Right.
expense for a house, right? Like
Exactly.
all these things. But that can easily once you calculate that number and you figure it out, like, okay, and some people have pensions, some people don't have pensions, right? Like that
Right.
will help cover that. But
Mhm.
once you have that number covered, right, and working with your
Mhm.
financial life, the rest is about what experiences do I want to have in my life? Do I want to
Mhm.
give people money? Do I have children that I want to give people money? Okay, when and
Right.
how much? Uh, what am I? What enjoyment? What fulfillment? When am I going to have these experiences? And so I think the first thing for people to do is calculate out what is their survival number. I call it the survival number, right?
Mm. Mhm.
Then after survival, we're talking about thriving. We
Right.
are human beings, so we are the only animal
Mhm.
that lives to thrive, not
Exactly.
to survive, right? Most
Right,
animals are
right.
surviving. I mean, you could see some thriving and fun in some of the primates, but
Uh-huh.
we are beyond just food and sustenance and shelter, right? And procreating, right?
Mhm.
We are about fulfillment and
Mhm.
enjoyment and having a great life. And so we should be taking advantage of that and thinking about, okay, I have survival covered. I'm an animal.
Right.
I get to cover that part of it, but
Mhm.
I am also a human. And I should be thinking about what does thriving mean in my life?
Mm.
And these are the intentional things that everyone should be thinking about
Mhm.
for each period of your life, because your life has seasons, right? What does
Right.
thriving mean in 20s? And then when the 20-year-old self dies, and I don't mean
Mhm.
dies at 30, I meant like goes on to 30. What does thriving mean in my 30s? What does
Mm.
thriving mean in my 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s until the grave? And
Mhm.
when you start to sit down and think about that, when you start to time bucket your life,
Mhm.
you'll notice a pattern in the things that you want and the things that you need to save for, and the things that you need to spend on in order to
Mm.
have a fulfilling life. And so
Okay.
that is the exercise that
Right,
people need to
right.
go through is, one of the things the book doesn't talk about,
Hmm.
which a lot of people ask the question sometimes is,
Hmm.
well, how do you know what you want?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
you
yeah.
need to know what you want, right? Like,
Right,
what are we
right.
living for, right? Like,
Hmm.
what are we living for? And so I think, in a broad sense, like people like will say, okay, my family and my friends, et cetera. But like, okay, but what activities do you want to do with your friends? Like,
Right.
what does that mean? What does that
Hmm.
mean spend time with your parents? What does that mean spend time with your boyfriend or your
Right.
husband, your
Hmm.
kids? What activities are you guys going to do? It's like it sounds easy. It's harder than you think because a lot of times we're on autopilot. We just, we have a job, we go to job, we go home, we ride the train, or we transport ourselves home, we cook dinner, et cetera. We do the
Right.
activities. We're generally reacting on
Hmm.
autopilot and not really thinking about, hey, what is it that I want out of this period before this period ends?
I see. And that changes over time too.
Yes. Yes. It
Hmm.
changes over time and it changes even in sometimes short terms, depending on how you interact with the environment, because life is discovery. People
Hmm.
don't wake up at 20 from the womb or even in their 20s, like, oh, I know exactly what I want for the rest of my life.
Mm.
Right. What happens is you go interact with the world
Hmm.
and you discover a lot of the things that you like and it changes your goals.
Hmm.
So this is something people have to revisit often. I didn't know I liked going to Japan and traveling around Japan, and I loved it. And it's like, oh, this is
Oh,
something I want
great.
to do
Great
more
to
in my
hear
life. It's
that.
very, yeah, it's very fulfilling, right? I really loved
Right.
it, and so I'm like, okay, this is something that I would like to work for, or I like to spend my money on, right, with my friends
Mm.
and enjoy, right? And before it was completely foreign to me, or people
Mm.
that go to Europe, or maybe they love playing pickleball. It doesn't matter like what it is.
Hmm.
By interacting with the world and the universe in this organic spacesuit called the body, right?
Hmm.
We learn and discover what we want, right?
Right, right. Uh-huh.
The basics we know. We know we want to survive. We know we want to breathe. We know we want to eat. But like most of the things that fulfill you, you've discovered throughout your
Mhm.
life,
Right.
right?
Mm.
Adult. And so this idea that you write it down once and that's it. Nope, that's not. You're going to have to keep coming back to
Exactly.
that time
Mm.
bucketing, that idea of like, oh, I didn't know. I got exposed to this, or I had a nice dinner with these people and they explained this. I would like to try that, right?
Hmm.
And then that could take your life on a totally different ride.
Right. And it seems to me that COVID-19 pandemic had changed a lot of people's mind, I guess, globally.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. The old saying, you don't know what you have until it's gone. And
Right,
so when
right. Uh-huh.
people were forced to be
Right.
alone in isolation
Uh-huh.
and think, they're like, wow, one, I think a lot of people at the time, whether regardless of the accuracy, confronted their mortality.
Right,
They
right.
were like,
Hmm.
wow, I might die very soon. What am I going to miss out on? What did I want in life? Right. And so they got to
Hmm.
think about that. And they also were cooped up and like, wow, I really wanted to do X, but now I can't do this. Right. Or
Hmm.
I always thought it was okay to, someday I was going to do this and now I can't. And maybe I never can. And so I think those initial questions
Hmm.
spark a lot more questions about, okay, if I ever get out of this alive, right? This
Hmm.
period, I'm going to take advantage of my life, right? I'm going to travel, I'm going to go do this thing, I'm
Right.
going to see
Uh-huh.
my friends, et cetera. And so I think that kind of absence from the absence of the ability to actually do these things that people were
Hmm.
putting off or not even thinking about, and then being
Right.
isolated and having a lot of time to think about
Hmm.
really shook them up,
Mm.
really got them out of their habits and their autopilot to think about what do I want out of life? What's a fulfilling life for me?
Mm, I see. Thank you. So, how about for those people in, like, for example, in the 40s? How would you say to someone who feels stuck?
First of all, Japan 40s is young. You might as well be 20. But because a lot of people get caught up on, particularly with savings, it's like I have more and more savings. And so money is very much like it's a tool. It's like hammers and saws,
Hmm.
right? Hammers and saws to build houses.
Hmm.
You can't just collect hammers and saws, hammers and saws, and hammers and saws and never build a house. I think when you sit down and think about, okay, what am I going to use the tool called money for?
Right.
And then you could say, okay, wow, this is a much better life. This is a much more fulfilling life for me.
Right.